Mark, you've been tip of spear on this Alabama decision straight when it came out. I needed you to be on the show to talk about it so people really understood the import of what just happened. People who do IVF want to have children. They want to grow their families. Now they may not be able to do so. Is this the end of IVF, at least in the state of Alabama?
It certainly is for now, unless the legislature acts. And even then, the Alabama Supreme Court has strongly suggested that it will not allow IVF to go on as currently practiced in accordance with best standards, even if the legislature steps in and attempts to legalize it. These hospitals and clinics and shipping services that have ended all kind of business or transfers or practice within the state of Alabama, they are sadly acting quite rationally. Under Alabama law, embryos are now the equivalent of children. That means that the destruction of embryos could potentially be homicide, which means that the way that IVF works, the fundamental system of in vitro fertilization, could be a criminal act and is at a minimum potentially the equivalent of killing a child that could subject clinics to millions in damages.
You know, Mark, you tweeted the other day that this ruling is a direct result of Dobbs. Some of us have warned that because of Dobbs, abortion medication, mifepristone, was going to be on the chopping block. Look what's happening right now. Now we see IVF. Contraception's probably also going to be around the corner. I mean, talk about the chilling effect that has happened because of this Dobbs decision.
Yeah, so first of all, let's be clear. The Alabama Supreme Court cited Dobbs repeatedly for the proposition that embryos are human beings with equal protection under the law. I've seen Republicans try to distance Dobbs from this ruling. Absolutely not. They are fundamentally intertwined. And that is because what Dobbs did was give states absolute leeway to define when life began and when that so-called life could receive protection under the law. Now, at the time, I think most people thought about this as abortion, right? A fetus, when that fetus could be terminated, when a woman experiencing a medical emergency during pregnancy could get an abortion. You know, those were the immediate issues. But Dobbs also applies to IVF because it has allowed Alabama to fully implement a state constitutional amendment that says that essentially embryos are humans, embryos are life, and they merit this kind of sweeping protection that, just to note, is not granted to actual human beings and actual children in Alabama, who are some of the most impoverished and undereducated children in the entire country. So this is not only a direct result of Dobbs in terms of precedent, but in terms of the Supreme Court's reasoning, freeing states to take these extreme steps. It just could not have happened if Trump had not appointed the 3 justices who led the way in overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, and Mark, the Chief Justice Greg Parker of the Alabama Supreme Court wrote a concurrence that nobody else signed on to, and maybe they thought it was just as nutty as we all thought it is, but I'm not being casual about this. Parker went on a QAnon interviewer show. He talks about how Christian nationalism is the way to go. He infused biblical passages into his concurrence and talked about how it's the invocation of the wrath of God to be able to, you know, dispose of embryos in any way. How is this not disqualifying, Mark, for a judge to be able to be promoting this type of philosophy and then infusing it directly into an opinion that is filed in a court?
Yeah, I think the question really is, how could this opinion possibly withstand constitutional muster under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which guarantees the separation of church and state? And here again, we have to look to SCOTUS. We have to look to the United States Supreme Court, which in a series of decisions, especially in 2022's Kennedy versus Bremerton, absolutely eviscerated what remained of the separation of church and state, took away these key protections against the infusion of religion and government, and essentially freed judges like Chief Justice Parker to implement their own extremist evangelical ideology as part of state law. The Supreme Court took away all of the remaining safeguards that shielded us as a pluralistic society, as citizens of many different religions, from the state imposing one specific religious belief on all of us. So again, you know, Chief Justice Parker appears to be a real kook. Affiliations with QAnon, his decision is outrageous, but it just doesn't happen, and it doesn't have legal force if the United States Supreme Court hadn't given him free rein to do this.